Heisman market, because we've been talking during the break, who's going to win this award? The way things are shaking out right now, it looks like it's between Bryce Young and Kenneth Walker III, CJ Stroud, Matt Corral, those guys also in it as well. But these odds, based on BetMGM, Bryce Young is the plus 175 favorite. Kenneth Walker, plus 375. Stroud, 4-1. Corral, plus 450. And then you get the drop-off to Caleb Williams at 8-1. Kenny Pickett, 20-1. Sam Hartman, 30-1. Travion Henderson, your guy, 40-1. Desmond Ridder, 50-1. And Bijan Robinson, for some reason, he's listed 66-1.
Yeah, I don't know why he's listed there. If I'm
1,000-1.
If I'm Bijan Robinson, I go into 7-7 Sark's office and I say, "Here's the deal, buddy. While you're fixing yourself a drink, I'm not playing for the rest of the season." The bottom line is this guy is the best running back in college football. There's no reason to put himself in harm's way. Let him come back next year healthy and ready to go, so that way they can get to the Alamo Bowl with a 7-5 finish in 2022. But speaking of Kenneth Walker, he should be the odds-on favorite right now. I don't understand why Bryce Young is there. Are we basing this on his team or are we basing it on the best player? If you take Kenneth Walker off of Michigan State, Mel Tucker is not getting paid extra money. If I'm Kenneth Walker, I go to Mel Tucker's office and I say, "Dude, I'm going to expose you as a head coach. I want $1 million of your next contract. Otherwise, I'm not playing anymore." That's the bottom line. Listen, whatever team is unfortunately takes Mel Tucker, enjoy 7-5. That's what Mel Tucker's going to be for you.
LSU fans seem excited about him.
Well, because you know what? LSU, think about this. Their last three coaches, two of them have been fired. They've won a national championship. Les Miles, Nick Saban was the only one who wasn't fired. Les gets fired, and then, of course, Ed O wins the national title, and he's fired as well. So, but Walker, to me, 1,340 yards, 15 touchdowns, number 2 in the nation in terms of touchdowns rushing, but number 1 in the country in terms of rush yards. And unlike Tyler Algier at BYU leads the nation in touchdowns rushing, he has not had the benefit of playing Virginia's run defense. I mean, if he's played Virginia's run defense, he might be at 23 rushing touchdowns. That defense is so bad, and we're going to see that with Williams and company tonight for Notre Dame. But I think Walker's got to be the leader in this clubhouse. I don't even understand how C.J. Stroud is at 4-1. Did anyone watch C.J. Stroud the last 2 weeks?
Yeah, and it didn't look good against Nebraska there.
He might not be the Ohio State Heisman in the quarterback's room right now alone. I mean, come on, give me a break. Matt Corral is taking a big dip. Caleb Williams, we're giving Heisman trophies to guys who play 6 games.
It's interesting you bring up Caleb Williams because obviously they have Baylor this week, Iowa State next week, Bedlam to end the regular season. They could play one of those 3 teams again in the Big 12 title game down there in Jerry World. Now, do you think 4 outstanding games from Caleb Williams can make him a legitimate Heisman? And I feel like I ask you this every week because he continues to be up here on the odds board despite the limited snaps. But do you think it's a real possibility that if he plays 4 outstanding games, he can throw himself into this Heisman mix?
Well, his stats are great, right? 14 touchdown passes, 1 INT. That makes a big difference. So that's why you're seeing him there. That's why the conversation is there with him. So I don't know. He'd have to play extremely well.
Let's get back to Kenneth Walker III because I'm looking at Michigan State's schedule right now. Kenneth Walker III, in terms of Michigan schedule, Maryland is the game that they have today. But then they play at Ohio State next week, which is going to be a massive game, another noon game for the East Coast there, 9 a.m. out here on the Pacific in Columbus. Then they have Penn State to finish the year. Now, that game has lost a little bit of luster with Penn State now having 3 losses, and who knows what happens today when they take on Michigan. But if Kenneth Walker III, do you think he absolutely needs the team success to win the award? Or do you think that even if he just plays outstanding, puts up the big production like you mentioned, that he can still get there? Let's say maybe the Spartans are a 2 or maybe even 3-loss team.
Femi, that's a great question. And unfortunately, I think he needs the team success because you have to go back to RG3, who had a 3-loss team, Tim Tebow, who had a 3-loss team. You also look at historically running backs that have won it, Reggie Bush and the 2 Bama guys, Ingram and Henry.
National title teams.
Yeah, it's hard for players on teams that are running backs to win it. This has become a quarterback award, and that's really unfortunate. I hope the voters do like they did last year with Devontae Smith, give a guy like Kenneth Walker. This would be great. I mean, and I'm not a guy who you should just give it to somebody. He has been the most outstanding player.
Yeah.
If you look at Michigan State for about 3 decades, they had a bunch of plotters at tailback. Now they've got a guy that's a difference maker. 5 touchdowns against Michigan. I mean, in a big game, nationally televised game. If that doesn't make him the front runner, I don't know what it's going to take for him to be there at that level.
I think Matt Corral might have a chance, Amal. The reason why I say that is because they have the big game here today against Texas A&M. A&M's defense is outstanding. But then he also, I mean, granted, he ends the year with Vanderbilt and at Mississippi State. But Mississippi State, the Egg Bowl, is always a pretty big game. It's on Thanksgiving this year. So most people watch NFL on Thanksgiving, but it's still a national audience for college football voters who vote on the Heisman. If he has an absolutely elite type of performance today, I think we can see him at plus 250 or 3-1 this time next week, because he has been out, like the passing, the rushing combined, what he means to Ole Miss. He's the only reason that they're actually ranked near the top 10.
Well, I would agree with you on that. But, Femi, you asked a great question about Michigan State and the scenario with Walker. You followed it up with a terrible take on Matt Corral. I'm going to tell you what, this guy's got 2 touchdown passes and 1 INT in his last 3 games. I mean, what's he going to do? He didn't show up against Alabama. Look, I thought he played fairly well, 21 for 29 in that matchup. But, you know, these guys base so much of this on touchdown passes. He's got 16 touchdowns and 2 INTs. And we're going back to the Paul Hornung days if you're going to win a Heisman with these types of numbers. You know, you got
well, then why is he plus 450?
You know, a lot of this, it's a good question. A lot of these odds are predicated or based upon money that's come in, or been dictated by money that's come in.
Could be liability.
Yeah, liability. And so it's not necessarily accurate from that standpoint. Like Bryce Young is a guy that probably took a lot of money in the preseason. He's an Alabama quarterback, maybe somebody who doesn't follow college football that closely, but certain bettors do. And so they realize he's probably a viable option. But Walker is probably a field bet, right? So I don't know what the field was, maybe 25-1 or something. So probably don't have a ton of liability on that. People take the Ohio State quarterback, Clemson. Those, you know, you get the 3 quarterbacks from those big programs, and then
Oklahoma.
Yeah, exactly. Those 4. I'm sorry.
Unfortunately
Yeah,
for me as well.
Yeah. So when you look at that, but they're good because who's the kid? Rattler. He's not going to win it. So from that standpoint, we know DJ's not getting there. I mean, the car would break down on the road driving to New York City. I mean, just take 95 north and it would still figure out a way to stall, just like that offensive line does every week for Clemson. But the bottom line
Poor
is,
DJ.
Yeah, well, he hasn't played well himself either. You might want to get the ball to Justin Ross. I get your point, but I think some of these numbers are a little bit skewed because of that. And I still don't even understand why we've got John Mechie at 150-1. He should be 150 million to 1. I mean, come on.
Desmond Ridder 60-1. Now, like, he is a guy that could have come into it, but like just like the statistical production is just not there.
But he was 31 for 40 last night. 2 touchdowns. He had a pick, and the pick came on a tip play. Yeah. I mean, he has played well. But
nobody's watching Cincinnati, especially with when you look at their schedule. He doesn't have the games that are going to get the national attention, so where people are going to say, "Oh, wow, Desmond Ritter's playing well." Now he might get an invite just because they want to feel good about Cincinnati for not putting them into the playoff. But I don't see him actually winning the award.
Who is it? Will Anderson at Alabama.
Yeah.
You know, Jordan Davis. Look, you want to know who the Heisman finalists should be? I'm going to tell you who they should be. Kenneth Walker should be the only offensive representative. It should be Jordan Davis, Will Anderson, and Kayvon Thibodeau.
100% agree.
The Heisman is the most outstanding player. And if that's the case, send the 4 best players who have played the best, and 3 of them have been defensive players.
Can we just stop with the quarterback love? I mean, like the amount of people, and like it's just want to hammer your point home because I 100% agree with what you're saying there. Most outstanding does not mean most valuable. Yes, of course.
Correct.
The quarterback is the most
right.
valuable player, of course, because they touch the ball every play, et cetera, yada, 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 yada. But most outstanding is the same issue why Ndamukong Suh, way back when he was at Nebraska, I thought should have won the Heisman.
I agree with you.
It should go to the best player in the country. Why haven't we figured that out?
I thought a couple of years ago, Joe Burrow had an amazing year, but I thought it was correct that they got Chase Young to New York.
Yeah.
And to me, I'm with you. If you go by the most outstanding player, and I said Walker, but we're not including on the list, it should be Jordan Davis, right? Like, he has been absolutely amazing.
Been a monster.
Just go back and put the tape of the Clemson game on, right? I mean, he was absolutely eating that Clemson offensive line for breakfast, lunch, and dinner. Will Anderson's been amazing for Alabama, and then Thibodeau's been a game wrecker. Yeah. It's unfortunate Thibodeau didn't play in that game against Ohio State, but the games he has played.
I mean, the UCLA game.
He single-handedly won the game for them. I mean, how many times? Usually you can blame a guy for losing a game, but you can't sit there and say, hey, by the way, this guy won the game for us.
Yeah.
And so for me, I think they should be giving credit to the people, that, including the defensive players. They just don't do enough of that, and I think you bring up an excellent point. It's just ridiculous that they give it to the quarterbacks. But, it's the same thing I say about AP poll voters. You go to cover a game let's say you go cover a Huskies game and they're playing at 3:30 Eastern, 12:30 Pacific. Yep. You're not watching the other games.
Nope.
You should not be able to vote in these polls. It should be guys like me who watch 40 games on a Saturday. It's ridiculous. These guys just did they cover the spread? That's all they do is they check to see, did you cover the number? Cincinnati's going to get downgraded by somebody because they only won by 17.
Yep, haven't covered in 3 weeks.
Exactly.
Yeah, no, I think from talking this out, and this is why we do market checking, this is why I think it's a valuable segment as a bettor, is just talking these things out. I think Kenneth Walker has to be the bet here. Like, I don't have anybody in Heisman contention. The people I bet on, you always laugh at me, Chris Olave, Spencer Rattler. Those are my guys, Graham Mertz. So it's a murderer's row, who's who of Heisman selections for me. But
hold on a second, Femi. I'm a little bit offended. He never mentioned Graham Mertz before. This is a criminal case here. Graham Mertz, my God. They've had one quarterback for 1 year, Russell Wilson.